The smell of fresh coffee fills my memory every time I think about that afternoon. I don't understand why. Maybe it's because coffee was sacred in our home. Every single morning for 3 decades, I'd wake up early, brew a strong pot, and wait for him at the kitchen table. That aroma was the soundtrack to our marriage. That aroma meant everything was normal, everything was safe, everything was ours. But that afternoon, the smell of coffee became something different. It became a ghost, a reminder of a life that no longer existed. My name is Catherine. I'm 60 years old now, and I'm about to tell you a story I never thought I'd have to share with anyone, let alone the entire world. But maybe, just maybe, my pain can become your strength. Maybe my broken heart can help you see clearly when your own eyes are blurred by trust. Before I tell you what I found in that bedroom, I need you to understand something. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the masks we wear, the lies we tell ourselves, and the moment when everything comes crashing down. Stay with me till the very end because you won't believe how karma caught up with the people who destroyed my life. It started the week before. My sister Caroline called me from her place in Denver. She was dealing with some serious health issues, nothing life-threatening, but enough that she needed company, support, someone to help her through the worst days. She asked me to come stay with her for about 7 days. I remember hesitating because I hated leaving James alone. We'd been together for so long that the thought of being apart felt strange, even unnecessary. But James insisted. "Go to your sister," he'd told me, holding my face in his hands the way he used to do when we were younger. "She needs you more than I need you here. I'll be fine. I can manage the house, the meals, everything. Don't worry about me." I believed him because I had no reason not to. 30 years of marriage builds a foundation that feels unshakable. Or at least that's what I thought. I took the early morning bus out of the city. I remember watching our neighborhood disappear behind me, feeling that familiar tug of separation anxiety, but also telling myself it was just 6 days. 6 days was nothing. We'd been through much worse. Financial struggles, career disappointments, the normal wear and tear of a long marriage. 6 days apart couldn't break what we'd built. Caroline was doing better by the 3rd day. The doctors had adjusted her medication, and she seemed more like herself. On that 3rd morning, I woke up with this strange feeling in my chest. Not quite anxiety, but something close to it. A restlessness that wouldn't let me settle into the day. Caroline noticed it immediately. "You should go home," she told me while we were having breakfast. "What?" "No, we agreed I'd stay the full week." "I know, but I'm doing better now. I have my neighbor checking in on me, and honestly, you seem like you need to be somewhere else." She smiled at me gently. "Go home to your husband. Surprise him with an early return." I called the bus station and booked an afternoon ticket. I didn't tell James. I wanted it to be a surprise, maybe cook his favorite meal, create one of those little romantic moments that long marriages sometimes forget about. Maybe we could reconnect, talk like we used to talk, remember who we were before routine took over. I arrived back in town just before noon. The sun was beating down hard that day. Our street was quiet, almost eerily quiet. Everyone was at work or inside, hiding from the heat. And then I saw it. A car in our driveway. A light blue sedan that looked familiar in a way I couldn't immediately place. I stood at the gate for a moment, trying to remember where I'd seen that car before. And then it hit me. It belonged to Patricia. Patricia Hayes, the mother of my daughter-in-law, Jennifer. The woman who'd married my son, Michael, 5 years ago. The woman whose mother I'd served coffee to, shared recipes with, discussed the grandchildren with while sitting in my living room like a friend. What was her car doing in my driveway? In my garage? My heart started beating faster. I told myself there were 1,000 innocent explanations. Maybe she'd come to drop off something for Jennifer. Maybe she needed to talk to James about something family-related. Maybe she'd broken down and needed help. These thoughts raced through my mind as I approached the front door. But underneath all those rational explanations, something darker was stirring. Something primal. Something that whispered warnings I didn't want to hear. I opened the door slowly, carefully, as if I was entering someone else's home instead of my own. The house was silent. Too silent. There was no television playing in the background, no radio, no sound of activity. Just this profound, unsettling quiet. I moved toward the staircase and began climbing, one step at a time. Each footfall on the hardwood felt loud, deliberate, like I was walking through someone's private moment. I should have called out. I should have announced my presence. But something stopped me. Something told me that silence was my only advantage. When I reached the top of the stairs, I heard it. Laughter. Laughter coming from my bedroom. Our bedroom. The room where we'd slept together for nearly 30 years. The room where we'd made love, where we'd cried together, where we'd watched sunrises and comforted each other through nightmares and fears. That laughter didn't belong there. That laughter was wrong. I walked down the hallway slowly, and the door came into view. It was slightly open, just enough for me to see inside. And there, in a moment that seemed to freeze time itself, my entire life shattered. What would you do if you walked in on that scene? Comment below, I really want to know. But first, let me tell you what I saw. James was standing in front of our bed with 2 suitcases open. Clothes were folded neatly on the white comforter. His shirts, his pants, his favorite shoes, the ones I bought him for his birthday 3 years ago. And next to him, helping him pack with a familiarity that made my stomach turn, was Patricia. Patricia Hayes. She was holding one of his sweaters, folding it carefully, methodically, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. Like this was her role now. Like this was her life to pack instead of just standing in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, pretending to be my friend. They turned around at exactly the same moment. Both of them froze when they saw me standing in the doorway. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The silence was so heavy, so suffocating that I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like the air had left the room entirely. It was Patricia who made the first sound. A kind of gasp. A whisper of my name that trailed off before she finished saying it because there were no words. There could never be enough words to explain what I was looking at. My voice didn't sound like my own when I finally spoke. What is happening here? James wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked down at the suitcase, then at Patricia, then back at the floor, everywhere except at me. When he finally tried to speak, his voice was quiet, almost defeated. You weren't supposed to be back today. Those were the first words out of his mouth. Not an explanation, not an apology, not a denial. Just an acknowledgement that I'd arrived at the wrong time, that I'd ruined whatever plan they'd carefully constructed. I don't care when I was supposed to be back. I heard myself saying, though it felt like someone else was speaking through my body. I want to know what this is. Why are your things packed? Why is she here? Patricia opened her mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. She was trembling. I could see it in her hands, in the way her whole body seemed to shrink under the weight of being caught. Sit down, Catherine, James said, using that tone he used when he was trying to control a situation, when he was trying to manipulate an outcome. I don't want to sit down, I replied, my voice getting louder, stronger. I want you to tell me what is happening. Right now. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him do 1,000 times when he was stressed, when he was about to say something difficult. That familiar gesture made everything feel real in a way that terrified me. We need to talk about this, he began. Then talk, I snapped. Explain to me why you're packing. Explain why she's helping you. Explain why my husband is leaving with his friend's mother. And then he said something that made the room spin. Because I'm in love with her. The words hung in the air between us like a physical object. I felt dizzy. I had to grip the doorframe to keep myself standing. In love. I repeated, my voice breaking. James, what are you talking about? How long has this been going on? Patricia's voice came out small and broken. About 2 years. 2 years. 2 years of lies. 2 years of her sitting at my table, eating my food, drinking my coffee, looking me in the eye and pretending to be someone she wasn't. 2 years of my husband betraying me while I was busy being the perfect wife, the supportive partner, the woman who asked no questions and demanded nothing. I looked at Patricia with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. How could you? I asked her. I trusted you. I treated you like a friend. She started crying silently, tears rolling down her face, but I couldn't feel any compassion for her. Not anymore. The time for compassion had passed the moment she decided to pursue my husband. This wasn't how I wanted to tell you, James said, and now his voice had changed. It was colder somehow, more distant. I was going to leave a letter. I was going to explain everything carefully. A letter. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. After 30 years of marriage, you're going to leave me a letter? Catherine, please understand. Understand what? I interrupted him. Understand that you've been lying to me? Understand that you've been stealing time, stealing intimacy, stealing our marriage and giving it to her? Understand that you've destroyed our family. Our marriage has been dead for years, James said. And this is when I heard the coldness in his voice turn into something harder, something almost cruel. You know that. I know that. We've just been pretending for so long that we forgot what it was like to actually feel something. I felt like I'd been punched. Not because what he was saying was true, I didn't believe that for a second, but because he was saying it like it was an excuse. Like the fact that we drifted apart somehow gave him permission to destroy us entirely. So what happens now? I asked, my voice hollow. You just leave? You walk out with her? James nodded slowly. Yes. That's exactly what's happening. And what about our family? What about Michael and Jennifer? What about the grandchildren? I've thought about that, he said. But I also have to think about my own happiness. I deserve that, don't I? I deserve to be happy. And in that moment I understood something terrible. This wasn't about love. This was about James making a choice to prioritize his own desires over everything and everyone else. He was choosing to blow up our entire life because he'd convinced himself that he deserved better. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you. Get out of my house right now. I watched as James and Patricia loaded the suitcases into the trunk of her car. I watched from the window as they drove away. And when the car disappeared around the corner, I slid down the wall and cried harder than I'd ever cried in my entire life. I cried for the marriage I'd lost. I cried for the man I thought I knew. I cried for the life that had just evaporated in front of my eyes. When I finally had the strength to move, I went upstairs and found a white envelope on the pillow. It was addressed to me in James's handwriting. Inside was the letter he'd mentioned, the letter he'd been planning to leave while I was gone. I read it through blurred eyes. Dear Catherine, I know this is going to hurt you. I know this is going to change everything. But I can't keep living this lie. 2 years ago, I met Patricia, and she made me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in decades. First, I tried to resist it. I tried to convince myself that what I felt wasn't real. But the more time I spent with her, the more I realized that I couldn't go back to our marriage. I couldn't pretend anymore. You deserve someone who truly wants to be with you. And I deserve to be with someone who makes me feel like myself again. I hope that someday you can forgive me. I hope you understand that this wasn't about you. This was about me choosing my own happiness. I'm sorry, James. I read the letter 3 times, and with each reading my sadness transformed into something else. Something stronger. Something more focused. Rage. I need to know something. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to have that trust shattered? Comment your story below. I want to hear from you. The first few days after James left were the darkest days of my life. I didn't eat. I barely slept. All I could do was walk through the house like a ghost, touching the walls, staring at photographs, trying to piece together how I'd missed the signs. How had I been so blind? How had I let this happen? The house felt different without him. Not just empty but hollow. Even when James and I weren't actively talking, his presence had filled the spaces. His footsteps, his breathing, the sound of him moving through our home. It had all been like background music that I'd stopped noticing years ago. Now that it was gone, the silence was deafening. On the 3rd day my phone rang. It was Michael, my son. Mom, is it true? His voice sounded broken, shattered. Is it true that Dad left? That he's with Jennifer's mother? I closed my eyes. I'd been dreading this conversation, but I knew it was coming. Yes, son. It's true. He sobbed on the other end of the line. That can't be. Dad wouldn't do that. He loves us. He loves you. I thought he did too, Michael. I really thought he did. I told him everything. The whole story from beginning to end. From the suspicions I'd had months ago that I'd pushed aside, to the trip to visit his aunt, to the moment I opened that bedroom door and saw my entire world collapse. Michael listened in silence, and when I finished, all I heard were his quiet tears. How is Jennifer? I asked him carefully. Devastated. She can't believe her mother did this. She feels ashamed, Mom. Like she's somehow responsible for her mother's actions. My heart broke for Jennifer. She was innocent in all of this. A good woman, a good mother, and now she was carrying the weight of her mother's betrayal. Tell her that none of this is her fault, I said. Tell her that I don't blame her for any of this. What about Dad? Do you blame him? The question caught me off guard. Did I blame him? The answer was complicated. Yes, absolutely. But there was also sadness mixed in with the anger. Sadness for the man he'd been. Sadness for the marriage we'd lost. Sadness for the years that had been wasted on a lie. I don't know yet, Michael. I'm still trying to understand everything. While Michael and I were talking, I was also thinking about the fact that this wasn't just about James and Patricia. This was about how easily people could compartmentalize their lives. How they could smile at you over coffee while secretly plotting to destroy you. How they could keep two completely different versions of themselves alive at the same time. Over the next few weeks, I stopped going out. My friends called. My sisters called. People came by the house to check on me. But I couldn't face anyone. I couldn't bear to see the pity in their eyes, couldn't handle hearing the whispered conversations about what happened. Everyone in town would know by now. Everyone would be talking about how James left his wife for his daughter-in-law's mother. It was the kind of scandal that small towns lived for. One afternoon, I was cleaning out the bedroom closet when I found something that made my chest tighten. A shoebox hidden in the back behind a stack of old blankets. I pulled it down with trembling hands and opened it. Letters. Dozens of them. All handwritten. All from Patricia. I took them out one by one, and as I read them I felt sick. They were love letters. Pages and pages of words where Patricia told James how much she loved him, how much she missed him, how desperately she wanted to be with him openly instead of hiding in the shadows. In one letter from over a year ago, she wrote, "My love, I know this is difficult for both of us. I know Mary doesn't deserve what we're doing to her, but we don't deserve to live unhappily either. Life is too short, and I want to live it with you. Only with you. Mary." She'd called me Mary in the letter, like I was just some obstacle in her way instead of the woman her lover was married to. I kept reading, and in another letter from a few months back, Patricia had written, "Robert, it's becoming harder and harder to see you at family gatherings and pretend we're just acquaintances. To see Mary serve you coffee, to watch her smile at you with that trust in her eyes. It breaks my heart and makes me furious at the same time. When you're with her, you're thinking about me, right? Tell me you're thinking about me." But that wasn't what her letter had said. Her letter had used different names, different details, but the core of it was the same. She'd written about how seeing me with James made her angry because she knew he was mine when she desperately wanted him to be hers. I put the letters back in the box and hid them again. I couldn't look at them, but I also couldn't throw them away. They were evidence. Proof that what had happened wasn't some spontaneous moment of weakness. It was calculated. It was planned. It was deliberate betrayal orchestrated by someone who had looked me in the eye and pretended to be my friend. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed. His side was empty now, had been empty for weeks, and I thought about all the moments when I should have seen it coming. At my grandson's birthday party last year, I'd overheard James and Patricia talking quietly in another room. They were discussing something, making plans. At the time, I'd convinced myself they were talking about real estate or business advice. But now I knew the truth. They'd been planning our destruction. Every time James had said he needed to help Patricia with something, every time he'd gone to her house to fix something or advise her on something, I just accepted it. I'd been the perfect, trusting wife. and my trust had been weaponized against me. What would you do if you discovered that someone you considered a friend had been deceiving you for years? Tell me in the comments. I need to know if I was alone in this. I started investigating. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I didn't care about pride anymore. Pride seemed like such a luxury for people whose worlds hadn't just exploded. I went through James's desk, looking for anything that might explain this. I found credit card statements showing charges I didn't recognize. Restaurants I'd never been to. A jewelry store receipt for something I'd never received. That receipt hurt almost more than anything else. He'd bought jewelry for someone else. While I was sleeping beside him, he was buying gifts for another woman. The thought made my skin crawl. I called my best friend, Elena. She was the one person I could talk to honestly, the one person who wouldn't judge me for doing the things I was doing to uncover the truth. Elena, I need your help, I told her. I need to know everything. We met at a cafe downtown. I brought copies of the evidence I'd found. Elena read through the credit card statements, the receipt, the partial information I'd pieced together. Oh my God, Catherine, she said, shaking her head. How did you not see this? That's what I keep asking myself, I replied. How did I miss all of this? How was I so blind? You weren't blind, Elena said, reaching across the table and taking my hand. You were trusting. There's a difference. But Catherine, we need to think about what you're going to do. Are you going to let them just disappear? Are you going to let him leave and take money and destroy your life without consequences? I didn't have an answer. Part of me wanted to fight, to hire a lawyer, to make James and Patricia's betrayal public knowledge. Another part of me just wanted to forget, to move on, to stop carrying the weight of their deception. I need time, I told Elena. I need to think about what I really want. Over the next month, I started making small changes to my life. I cut my hair short. I bought new clothes. I started taking morning walks again, something I'd stopped doing years ago when James said he preferred that I stay home and prepare breakfast. I joined a book club. I started volunteering at a local library. Slowly, very slowly, the pain began to transform into something else. Not healing yet, but movement. The slightest progress toward living again instead of just existing in the wreckage. Then one afternoon, I was at the grocery store picking up vegetables when someone grabbed my arm gently. I turned around to see Elena standing there with a serious expression on her face. Catherine, we need to talk. Not here, but somewhere private. We went to the same cafe where we'd met before. Elena ordered 2 coffees and sat down across from me with her hands folded in front of her. I've been thinking about what you told me, she began carefully. About James and Patricia, about the letters, about all of it. And I did something. I need you to know that I did it because I care about you, even though you might be upset with me. What did you do? I asked, my heart already starting to race. I contacted a private investigator. He looked into their finances, their phone records, everything. Catherine, there's something you need to know. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table toward me. Inside were pages of documentation, bank statements, phone records, dates and times of calls and meetings. Patricia has been transferring money from her account to James's account, Elena explained. But that's not all. She's also been paying for his expenses. His apartment, his car, his credit cards. Everything. What? I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing. And there's more. They're planning to leave the country. Mexico. In 2 months. The investigator found evidence of flight bookings, hotel reservations, everything. They're going to run away together and start a new life on the other side of the border. I felt the floor spinning beneath me. This wasn't just betrayal. This was betrayal on a scale I hadn't imagined. James wasn't just leaving me for another woman. He was planning to abandon his entire life, his children, his grandchildren, and start over somewhere else where no one knew him, where no one would judge him. There's something else, Elena said quietly. The money Patricia is spending on James. A lot of it is coming from her late husband's estate. Money that should have gone to Jennifer as an inheritance. I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my coffee. I need to talk to Michael, I said. Jennifer needs to know what her mother is doing. I drove directly to Michael's house. When he opened the door and saw my face, he knew something was wrong. Mom, what happened? Are you okay? We need to talk, I told him. And you need to call Jennifer. Now. We sat in their living room and I told them everything. The money transfers, the plane tickets, the plans to leave the country. Jennifer's face went from shock to anger to betrayal as she listened to me speak. My mother is spending my inheritance on this man? She asked incredulously. She's spending money that my father left for me to finance her affair? I'm afraid so, I said quietly. Michael was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice filled with a rage I'd never heard from him before. I'm going to talk to Dad. I'm going to make sure he understands that he's lost us. All of us. If he leaves this town with Patricia, if he abandons his family, he will never have a relationship with us again. Michael, I don't want you to think I'm asking you to do this, I said. I don't want to manipulate you the way they've manipulated us. You're not manipulating me, Mom. This is my decision. This is about my family. This is about protecting our family from people who clearly don't care about us. He called James that night. I didn't hear the conversation, but when Michael hung up, he looked devastated. He said he's sorry, Mom. He said he knows what he's done is wrong, but he can't stop it. He said he's in love with Patricia, and he's going to go with her no matter what we think. I felt something break inside me. Not the sharp break of betrayal, but the deeper break of knowing that the man I'd spent 30 years with had chosen to be someone I didn't recognize. But that wasn't the end of the story. Not yet. Jennifer, in her pain and confusion, did something brave. She decided to confront her mother. 2 days later, Jennifer came to my house. She was crying, but there was also a steeliness in her eyes that I recognized. It was the look of someone who decided to stand up for herself. Mrs. Catherine, I went to see my mother, she began, and her voice was shaking. I confronted her about everything. About the money, about the plans to leave, about all of it. What did she say? I asked. She told me the truth, or at least part of the truth. She told me that she deliberately pursued your husband, that she'd made a deliberate choice to seduce him into leaving you. I felt sick. She said she spent almost a year getting close to him, Jennifer continued, getting him to confide in her, making him believe that you didn't appreciate him, that he deserved better. She was very calculated about it, very strategic. Jennifer, this is not your responsibility, I told her. This is not your fault. I know, but she's my mother, and I needed to know why she would do something like this. Her explanation was that after my father died, she felt invisible. She felt old and alone. And then she saw your husband and she became obsessed with the idea of having something like what you and he had. She wanted that for herself. So she just decided to take mine? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Yes. And Mrs. Catherine, she also told me about the money. My inheritance. She said she was going to use it to start a new life with your husband, and that I could build a new relationship with her once she was happy. I felt rage and sadness and pity all at the same time. Pity for a woman so desperate for connection that she would destroy an entire family to get it. This is where my story takes a turn you won't expect. Keep watching because what happens next will shock you. I made a decision. I was tired of carrying the weight of their betrayal. I was tired of letting what they'd done consume me. I needed to take back control of my own narrative, my own life. I called a lawyer. The lawyer, a woman named Susan who specialized in marital dissolution cases, reviewed all the evidence that Elena had gathered. She looked at the bank transfers, the credit card statements, the proof that James had been using marital funds to support his affair. We have a strong case, Susan told me. We can go after him for financial damages, for breach of fiduciary duty, for everything. How long will it take? I asked. Could be anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending on how he wants to fight it. I thought about that. 2 years of legal battles, of court appearances, of reliving this trauma again and again. 2 years of letting him live in my head, rent-free, while I pursued justice. I don't want to do that, I said finally. Susan looked at me like I'd lost my mind. You don't? Catherine, you have a legitimate claim. You could recover a significant amount of money. I know, but the money isn't what I want. I want my life back. And I realize that winning money from James isn't going to give me that. That night, I made another decision. I called Jennifer and asked her to give me Patricia's number. Are you sure, Mrs. Catherine? Jennifer asked. Do you really want to talk to her? Yes, I do. Patricia sounded shocked when she answered my call. There was a long silence before she even spoke. Catherine, is that you? Yes, it's me. I need to meet with you. Alone. Without James. There was another silence. Then she agreed. We met at a cafe. A different one than the places I'd been going to avoid running into anyone. I got there first and ordered black coffee. When Patricia walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked worn down, exhausted, like the weight of what she'd done was physically crushing her. She sat down across from me, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Why did you want to meet? She finally asked. Because I need to understand, I said. I need to hear from you directly why you did this. Not the explanations you've already given. Not the justifications. Just the truth. Patricia took a shaky breath. Because I was lonely. Because after my husband died, I felt invisible. I felt like my life was over at 55 years old. And then I saw James. I saw how he treated you, how he still showed up every day, how he cared even if you two had grown distant. And I wanted that. I wanted someone to care about me like that. So I created a plan to make it happen. You created a plan, I repeated. You didn't fall in love. You strategically pursued my husband with the goal of destroying my marriage. Yes, Patricia admitted, and tears were rolling down her face now. Yes, that's exactly what I did. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am genuinely sorry. Are you sorry because you're sorry? Or are you sorry because you got caught? Both, I think. I justified it to myself for so long. I told myself that your marriage was already over, that James was unhappy anyway, that I was actually helping him. But I know now that was all self-deception. I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I did it anyway. I stared at her for a long time. I'm not going to pursue any legal action against you, I said finally. I'm not going to make your life difficult. Patricia looked stunned. You're not. No. But I want you to understand something. The money that you've been spending on James, the money that came from your late husband's estate, that's money that belongs to Jennifer. And I expect you to find a way to repay it. If you don't, I will help Jennifer pursue whatever legal action is necessary. I understand, Patricia said quietly. I'll repay it. And James, I continued, you're planning to leave the country with him. Before you do that, I want you to understand what you're really getting. You think you're getting a man who loves you. But the truth is you're getting a man who's proven that he's willing to betray everyone he claims to care about. If he'll betray a 30-year marriage, what makes you think he won't betray you? Patricia's face crumpled. He's already started. He's barely speaking to me. He spends his time alone, thinking, regretting. It's like he's already disappeared even though he's standing right in front of me. I need to pause here and tell you something important. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, please comment your story. Your story matters. And stay with me because the ending of this story is where the real lessons are. I walked out of that cafe feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I'd gotten revenge or satisfaction or any of the things I thought I would get, but because I'd made peace with the situation. I'd chosen to let go instead of hold on. I'd chosen to move forward instead of stay stuck in the past. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I decorated my house differently. I took down photographs of James and me and replaced them with paintings I made myself, with pictures of my grandchildren, with memories of places I wanted to travel. I got a job at a bookstore, something I'd always wanted to do but James had discouraged because he said it wasn't practical. I took dance classes. I volunteered at the library. I had coffee with my friends every Sunday without fail. And slowly, very slowly, I started to recognize the woman looking back at me in the mirror. Not the woman I'd been, but a new version of myself. A woman who'd been broken and had chosen to put herself back together differently. Better. Michael checked on me regularly. Jennifer became closer to me, and I became like a second mother to her. My grandchildren brought light and laughter back into my life. 3 months passed. Then 6 months. Then a year. One day, I was at the grocery store when I saw him. James was standing in the produce section, looking at fruit like he was trying to solve a math problem. He looked older. Not just physically, but spiritually exhausted. I thought about walking the other way, but something told me that I needed to face this moment. "Hello, James," I said, approaching him slowly. He looked up, and for a moment I saw shock cross his face. Then pain. Then something that looked like regret. "Catherine, I didn't expect to see you. I live here, James. This is still my home. This is still my town." "Of course. I'm sorry, I just..." He trailed off, not knowing what to say. "How are you?" I asked, and I was surprised to find that I genuinely wanted to know. "Not well, to be honest," he admitted. "I'm not doing well at all." There was a silence between us. The noise of the grocery store filled the space, but it felt like we were in our own world, separated from everyone around us. "Patricia told me you weren't happy," I said carefully. "She did." James looked down. "Yeah. The truth is, Catherine, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Leaving you. Destroying what we had. It was the most foolish thing I've ever done." His words, the ones I'd maybe wanted to hear a year ago, no longer touched me the way I thought they would. They no longer hurt, but they also no longer healed anything. "James, I forgave you months ago. Not for you, but for me. Because I couldn't keep carrying that anger. It was poisoning my life." "Do you mean that?" he asked, hope flickering in his eyes. "Yes. But forgiving you doesn't mean we go back. Doesn't mean I want to try again. It just means I've let go of the resentment. Catherine, I know I don't deserve this, but could we maybe talk sometime? Could we maybe work on rebuilding our relationship, not as husband and wife, but as friends, as people who once meant everything to each other?" I thought about that question for a long moment. The truth was complicated. Part of me would always care about James because we'd shared so much time together. But another part of me knew that the foundation of trust had been broken in a way that could never be fully repaired. "I don't know, James. Right now, I need to focus on my own healing. Maybe someday, when enough time has passed, we can have that conversation. But that day is not today." "I understand," he said quietly. I picked up my groceries and left him standing there in the produce section. As I drove home, I didn't feel triumph or vindication. I felt sadness for the life we could have had if he'd just been honest with me. If he just talked to me about his unhappiness instead of hiding it. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something about life. Justice doesn't always look like what we expect it to look like. Sometimes it comes quietly from the inside. Sometimes it comes as the natural consequence of our own choices. Keep watching. 2 months after my encounter with James at the grocery store, Michael came to my house with Jennifer and their 2 children. He looked serious, concerned. "Mom, I need to tell you something about Dad and Patricia," he began. "What is it?" I asked, already bracing myself for bad news. "They didn't leave for Mexico. Patricia ended the relationship last week." I was shocked. "What? Why?" "Because she finally realized what she'd done," Jennifer explained. "She told me that living with my dad was nothing like what she'd imagined. She said that when she got what she'd been chasing, she realized she didn't want it after all. He was sad all the time, angry, withdrawn. He wasn't the man she'd fallen in love with because the man she'd fallen in love with was just a fantasy. He was a fantasy built on lies." "Where is he now?" I asked. "He's alone in a small apartment on the other side of town," Michael said. "He's not working much. He's isolated. Mom, I know what he did to you, and I know I shouldn't feel sorry for him, but I can't help it. He's my father, and he looks like he's given up on life." I felt a complicated mixture of emotions. Sadness that my husband had become this hollow version of himself. but also understanding that this was the natural consequence of his choices. When you build something on lies and betrayal, it can't sustain itself. It crumbles under its own weight. Have you been seeing him? I asked Michael. Yes. I try to go by once a week, make sure he's eating, that he's taking care of himself. But he's not the same person anymore, Mom. He's like a shell of who he used to be. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about James sitting alone in that apartment, surrounded by the wreckage of the choices he'd made. I thought about Patricia, who'd sacrificed everything for a fantasy that didn't exist. I thought about the money she'd spent, the relationship she'd destroyed, the price she'd paid for a moment of passion that had turned into bitterness. And I realized something profound. The revenge I thought I wanted, the public humiliation, the financial punishment, the legal battles, none of that would have made me feel better. Because the best revenge was simply moving on and living well. The best revenge was becoming the best version of myself. A few weeks later, I did something I never thought I'd do. I made James a home-cooked meal and brought it to his apartment. I didn't do it because I'd forgiven him or because I wanted to get back together or because I felt obligated. I did it because, despite everything he'd done, he was still Michael's father. He was still the man I'd spent 30 years with, and I was strong enough now to show compassion without compromising my own boundaries. When I arrived at his apartment, I was shocked by what I saw. The place was sparse, depressing. There was barely any furniture, and what was there looked like it hadn't been cleaned in weeks. "Catherine," James said when he opened the door, "what are you doing here?" "I brought food," I said simply. "You need to eat." I set up the meal in his small kitchen, and he sat down at the table like a broken man. He ate slowly, mechanically, like he was going through the motions rather than actually enjoying anything. "Why are you doing this?" he asked me. "Why are you being kind to me after everything I've done?" "Because I'm strong enough to," I replied. "Because I'm not the same person I was when you left. I've built a new life. I found peace. And that peace is big enough to include compassion for you, even though you hurt me." "I don't deserve this," he said with tears in his eyes. "No, you don't. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me, because I want to be the kind of person who can be compassionate, even when I've been wronged." I left the containers of food in his refrigerator. I told him to take care of himself and to seek professional help. I didn't promise to visit again, and I didn't promise to rebuild our relationship. But I did promise myself that I would continue to be kind, not for his benefit, but as a reflection of who I'd chosen to become. This is where the story takes its final turn. And I promise you it's worth staying till the end. Comment right now if you want to hear what happens next, and let me know if my story resonates with you. Today I'm 63 years old. 3 years have passed since the day I opened my bedroom door and saw James packing his suitcases. 3 years that have felt like a complete lifetime. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that I'm happier now than I've ever been in my life. It's not the loud happiness of grand achievements or dramatic moments. It's the quiet, deep happiness that comes from knowing yourself, respecting yourself, and loving yourself unconditionally. It's the happiness of peace. My house has been completely transformed. The photographs of James and me are gone. The walls are now decorated with paintings I've created, with photographs of my grandchildren, with memories of places I've traveled. Every corner of this house now reflects who I am, not who I was supposed to be. The bookstore where I work has become my sanctuary. I spend my days surrounded by stories and people who love them. I make recommendations, I lead book clubs, and sometimes, when I see a woman with that lost expression that I knew so well, I take her aside and share my story. I don't give advice. I just listen and remind her that she's going to survive this, that she's going to be okay, and that on the other side of the pain is a life she can't even imagine yet. My grandchildren are my greatest joy. Michael and Jennifer had another baby 3 years ago, and they named her Catherine. When Michael told me, I cried. Not from sadness but from pride and love. "We want her to have your name because you're the example of what we want her to be," Michael told me. A strong, brave woman who doesn't give up. The relationship between Michael, Jennifer, and me has deepened in ways I never expected. Jennifer has become like a daughter to me, not just by marriage but by choice. She went through her own healing journey after discovering what her mother had done, and we've supported each other through the process. Patricia's relationship with Jennifer has been more complicated. They see each other occasionally, but their connection has fundamentally changed. Patricia moved to Chicago and works in an office. She lives alone. Jennifer told me that her mother seems okay, but not truly happy. She's surviving, but she's not living. That's her consequence. And James? James is still in town, still in that small apartment. But Michael tells me he's doing better. He's going to therapy. He's working on understanding his own choices and the impact those choices had on everyone around him. We've run into each other a few times at the grocery store or around town. We've exchanged pleasant greetings. But we haven't had a deep conversation, and I don't think we need to. That chapter is closed. As I sit here now looking back on everything that happened, I've come to understand some profound truths. First, betrayal says far more about the person who commits it than about the person who's been betrayed. It's not a reflection of my worth or my value. It's a reflection of James's and Patricia's choices, their character, their priorities. Second, forgiving someone doesn't mean forgetting what they did or going back to the way things were. Forgiveness is about releasing the anger and resentment that poisons your own life. It's about taking back your power. When I forgave James and Patricia, I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for myself because I couldn't keep carrying that weight. Third, sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. There's nothing that hurts people more than seeing someone they've wronged move on and thrive. It's not vindictive or mean-spirited. It's just the natural consequence of their own choices catching up with them. Fourth, I learned that it's never too late to start over. At 58 years old, I thought my life was over. I thought that leaving a 30-year marriage meant I'd lost everything. But the truth is I gained so much. I gained freedom. I gained self-respect. I gained a deeper understanding of who I am and what I'm capable of. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, I learned that true strength isn't about never being broken. It's about being broken and choosing to put yourself back together in a way that honors who you really are. If you're watching this and you've experienced betrayal, if you've been hurt by someone you trusted, I want you to know something. What happened to me wasn't unique. It's happening to thousands of people every single day. People are being betrayed by their spouses, their friends, their family members. People are discovering that the people they loved most have been lying to them, manipulating them, using them. And I want you to know that you're going to survive this. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt more than you think anything could hurt. You're going to have days when you can't get out of bed, when you can't imagine ever being happy again, when you think that your life is over. Those days are real and they're valid. But I'm here to tell you that there's light on the other side of that darkness. There's a version of you that exists on the other side of the pain, and that version is stronger, wiser, and more complete than you ever were before. You're going to get through this. You're going to rebuild. You are going to flourish in ways you can't even imagine right now. The man or woman who betrayed you, they're going to have to live with that choice for the rest of their life. But you? You get to choose who you become after this. You get to choose to be bitter or to be strong. You get to choose to let this destroy you or to use it to build something better. I chose strength. I chose growth. I chose to become the best version of myself. And you can too. To anyone who's currently thinking about betraying someone you claim to care about, I want to tell you something. The temporary pleasure, the short-term satisfaction, the moment of feeling alive or desired or seen, none of that is worth the price you're going to pay. When you destroy someone's trust, you don't just hurt them. You hurt everyone around them. You hurt children, grandchildren, friends, family members. You create ripples of pain that spread far beyond what you can even see. And eventually, you have to live with yourself. You have to look in the mirror every morning knowing that you prioritized your own desires over the well-being of people who loved you and trusted you. Is that really who you want to be? To the women watching this right now on this channel, to the women who are struggling with betrayal, please know this: you matter. Your pain matters. Your story matters. And you deserve to be with people who see you, value you, and respect you. Comment below and tell me your story. Tell me how you've survived betrayal. Tell me how you've moved forward. Your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find the strength to keep going. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel for more true stories of survival and strength, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. Thank you for caring enough to listen. And remember, you are stronger than you think. You are more valuable than you know. And you deserve to be happy always. With all my heart, Catherine.